Peace. This is about new Titanic set sail in 2022 and will pass through original crash site. And as you can see here, here's the Titanic, but the original one in 1912 that was destroyed, and I do believe this is the new Titanic that's going to set sail in 2022. The sinking of the Titanic is perhaps the most famous yet devastating maritime disaster in modern history. So it was the sinking of the Titanic, yes, it was the famous history-making ever. Setting sail on its maiden voyage in 1912 from Southampton, UK to New York, the Titanic was one of the biggest and fastest passenger ships of its time, with it carrying over 2,000 passengers and crew members. Yeah, so it was it was a maiden voyage in 1912, and of course it sailed from the Southampton, UK to New York, because that's where it was going, to New York, and it had carried over 2,000 passengers and crew members. However, while crossing the Atlantic Ocean in the early hours of April 15th, the Titanic hit an iceberg, which subsequently caused the ship to sink, killing over 1,500 onboard passengers. See, so Titanic had slammed into a iceberg in that on April 15th in 1912 during that time. It caused the ship to sink, killing over 1,500 onboard passengers, and of course there was children too, right along with the parents. The Titanic's name has been tainted ever since, so of course no one has ever attempted to remake the doomed cruiser liner until now. And so everybody forgot about the Titanic. It was tainted. Nobody even cared about it at all anymore. There was no remake of it, of the doomed cruise liner, until now. So now the new Titanic, I do believe, is still being built, and it's also going to sail in 2022. One optimistic businessman has announced that construction for the Titanic II is currently underway and is scheduled to depart on its maiden voyage as soon as 2022, and he plans to make the new ship an exact replica of the original. Am I the only one who had a bad feeling about this? You know what, I really do believe it's a bad idea for the new Titanic because of what happened to the original one. And after all those people have passed away and everything, even though the construction is underway right now, I really think this is a bad idea to relive history like that with the replica of the original Titanic. And of course, here is the Titanic itself, but for all the wrong reasons, of course. At the time of its departure, the Titanic was the grandest, most luxurious cruise ships to have ever sailed the ocean, and was one of 3 Olympic-class ocean liners built by White Star Line in Belfast. So yeah, so this Titanic was one of the 3 Olympic-class ocean liners, and of course, one of the other sisters to the Titanic is the Olympic, and I don't remember what the third one is, but this is the Titanic that was sunk in 1912, and of course the new one is being built. The construction is underway as it is right now. And of course, here's Another screenshot of the Titanic of when she had sank in 1912. The Titanic was groundbreaking, of course. It was groundbreaking, yes. The ship was the biggest of its time, measuring in at 269 meters in length, making it the largest man-made moving object on Earth. It also traveled at 26 miles per hour, which was faster than any other vessel at the time. Yes, so that was a pretty big ship of being at 269 meters in length. So it is a big ship. So it is the biggest out of all the cruise luxurious liner. It only traveled 26 miles per hour, so that's not too bad. But to the Titanic, yeah, I guess it has to be like that. But and of course, here's the bell of the Titanic. The ship's name itself, Titanic, holds a dark irony, as it was supposed to convey its impressive size, power, and reputation as unsinkable. Yeah, so the ship was supposed to be unsinkable, but of course, fortunately, that didn't happen. It hit an iceberg allegedly, and the ship started to sink, and of course killing 1,500 passengers and everything else, because everything went underwater after that. After maybe about a couple of hours or so, when the ship finally sank. There was much excitement on the day of the Titanic's departure, and of course here's another screenshot in black and white. Passengers are waiting to get on to the Titanic. On April 10th, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton on her week-long transatlantic voyage to New York. Crowds of excitable onlookers waved her off, not knowing that she would never return. Yeah, so April 10th, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, and she was going to be on her week-long transatlantic voyage to New York. Of course the crowds are excitable onlookers and everything else, because they were happy to see the Titanic leaving dock or whatever, but they did not expect her to return. And of course, here's the Titanic itself, the picture of when it allegedly hit this iceberg over here. Six different iceberg warnings had been received throughout the day on Sunday, April 14th, but the cold and calm water conditions made it difficult to spot fateful icebergs. So there was 6 different warnings, and I guess nobody even paid attention to them, not even the captain. It was throughout the day on Sunday, April 14th during that time. But unfortunately, the cold and calm water conditions made it difficult to spot the fateful icebergs, so it really didn't get the message out too much in time because of the iceberg. And of course, here's when part of the ship was sinking, and of course here's the other part that was being into the air. At around 11:40 p.m. on Sunday, the ship's lookout spotted an iceberg in its path and sounded the alarm, but it was too late. There was a lookout for anything, any dangers coming or whatnot, and of course it was too late because they didn't catch it in time enough, so the ship just slammed right into the iceberg. And of course here is the the screenshot of the Titanic sinking and the two boats that had passengers from the Titanic to get away. Traveling at full speed, the Titanic had little time to steer clear of the iceberg, which subsequently tore into the ship's right side hull. Yeah, so it tore right into the ship's right side hull. The iceberg did, and it had little time to steer to clear the iceberg, but it was too late. Gaping wounds opened by the iceberg damaged 6 of the vessel's watertight compartments and flooded 5 of them within the hour. So yeah, you kind of figured you have all these watertight compartments and only 5 of them got or open, or 6 of them were destroyed by the vessel's watertight. Of course, the iceberg did all that damage. Here's another screenshot of it, of what happened to the Titanic. The Titanic's chief architect, Thomas Andrews, made it clear to Captain Edward John Smith that the ship was going to sink. Yeah, so Thomas Andrews was the one who kind of, I guess he had the idea of it being called the Titanic, but then he told Captain John Smith that she was going to sink. And at 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, the ship broke into and sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic, mere hours after initially colliding with the iceberg. Yeah, so around 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, during that time, the ship broke into 2, and of course she sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic mere hours after initially colliding with the iceberg. And here's the other screenshot of what happened to the Titanic. And of course, more passengers had to escape from the Titanic. And only 306 bodies were ever recovered. So there was 306 bodies that were never recovered after all, because they were all passed away after. Only 16 wooden lifeboats and 4 collapsible boats were carried, enough to accommodate 1,178 people. That's only 1/3 of Titanic's total capacity, but more than legally required. Yeah, so there was only 1,178 people that were still alive, because they were on lifeboats, collapsible boats. That was enough to accommodate that many. And of course, with Titanic, you gotta get all the first class people and the children off the boats before you start the middle class and then the last class of people. Here's another screenshot of it, of how of the boat sinking. The below freezing midnight waters of the Atlantic caused most of the passengers who reached the water in life jackets to freeze to death within minutes. Yeah, so the Atlantic Ocean is definitely a cold ocean. It's like sharp knives going through your body when you are in that water for so long. And of course, with passengers who reached the water in life jackets to freeze to death within minutes, there was no way anybody could have survived in the Atlantic Ocean at all, because of the sharp cold water that it is. And of course, here's the paper thing or something like that, but for these people have passed away in the Titanic as well. You got the first class people, and of course, the very first lifeboat to leave the sinking ship only carried 28 out of 65 possible passengers. This mistake was repeated with the other lifeboats. The rescue effort is often criticized for its unfair treatment of passengers from the ship's three classes, with third-class passengers suffering the most. Yeah, so the third class had really suffered the most because they wanted to get all the first-class people off the boat, off the ship first. So that's what happened. You got all the women first with the children. Then after that, then it would be with the men getting off the ship as well. And of course, here is the Titanic of hitting or is this another ship that had that has sank as well? The wreckage of the ocean liner lies some 12,600 feet underwater in the North Atlantic Ocean and was first discovered in 1985 by explorer Robert Ballard and oceanographer Jean-Louis Mitchell or something. So yeah, so the wreckage of the ocean liner is under 12,600 feet of water, and that's where it's at. And of course, Robert Ballard had found the Titanic just recently, of course. Yeah, and it's hard that you have to go through all this to figure out what's what and everything else to recover everything. A handful of companies are actually planning to take tourists down to the site in 2019 and 2020, but it's unclear how long that window of opportunity will be. Yeah, so they want to have companies to plan to take tourists down the site of this year and next year. I wouldn't even go because, the Atlantic Ocean is really sharp cold. And if you end up staying in that water in the Atlantic Ocean for so long, you're going to freeze to death no matter what. And of course, they said it's unclear how long that window of opportunity will be open, so it all depends on how long it will be. Though the vessel was the most glamorous in its time, and the name is, of course, incredibly famous, the horrific event and thousands of lives lost kind of taint all of that. Don't you think? Well, yeah, it was tainted because a lot of people lost lives to it, and of course there's lives lost kind of taint all of that. The vessel was the most glamorous in its time, so that's how long it's been. Here is, I do believe, Clive Palmer. I'm not sure who this is really. Meet Clive Palmer. The Australian politician turned billionaire is the founder behind the extremely ambitious project Titanic 2. So this guy is a billionaire. Oh my goodness. And of course he was the ambitious project of the Titanic 2. And of course here's another picture. When he's not building cruise liners, Palmer is the leader of the United Australia Party, which has a similar motto that to our own president, make Australia great. Oh boy, here it comes. Alright, so when he's not building cruise liners, he's the leader of the United Australia Parties, but of course, instead of him saying make America great again, he is got his own slogan. It says make Australia great. Palmer is one hell of a controversial man and has stirred up a lot of controversy with his outlandish policies and extravagant campaigns. Some critics also see the Titanic II as his classless attempt to crash it on a tragedy. And some people are not too happy about the second Titanic being built or and to set sail, because they feel as though he's using it as a controversial thing going on, and of course outlandish policies that they're claiming that he's using. His $500 million plans were initially announced in 2012, but have faced years of delays, and due to money-related problems, the work was suspended for 5 years. So the work was suspended for 5 years. His $500 million plans were initially announced in 2012, so that's how long it was. Of course, there was delays here and there due to related problems, of course. But now it has been confirmed that the construction of the highly anticipated ship will officially begin this year. Of course, it's going to begin this year because they got to go do a lot of reconstructing, make the replica of the Titanic on how it used to be and everything else. And of course, here's Palmer with his speech thing of what he's doing for the Titanic. Clive Palmer first announced his intention to construct the Titanic II in 2012, and of course, it was to construct the Titanic in 2012, but unfortunately it was delayed for 5 years. That year marked the 100th anniversary of the RMS Titanic's 1912 maiden voyage. Palmer's plan was inspired by the milestone date, though the debate is still open as to whether or not his project truly honors the tragedy. So yeah, during that time of during that time, it was 100 years old, 100th anniversary of the RMS Titanic's 1912 maiden voyage during that time. And of course, the debate is still open as to whether or not his project truly honors the tragedy. So we'll see. Alright, here's another screenshot of it. Palmer's own company, Blue Star Line, describes this project as the return of a legend and promise that the remake will be every bit as luxurious as the original ship. Yeah, so they're going to promise that the remake will be every bit of as luxurious as the original ship, but it all depends on how luxurious it's going to be for this Titanic too. And of course, here's Titanic of that will set sail in 2022. If everything goes to plan, the ship is set to make her maiden voyage as soon as 3 years from now. Though the history of the project thus far leaves plenty of room for skepticism, yeah, so she is set to sail in 3 years if everything goes right. Though the history of the project thus far leaves plenty of room for skepticism, so yeah, it's skeptical right now what's going on. And of course, as you can see here, where the Titanic originally sank at, because this is documented. Palmer announced that the first trip will set out from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates rather than the original location of Southampton, UK. So yeah, so it's going to set sail from Dubai to in the United Arab Emirates or something like that, but instead of the original UK where it came from in the first place. The final destination will still be New York City. To the sequel ship will indeed pass through the area where the original intersected with an iceberg. Yeah, so the final destination is going to be New York City. And of course, the ship will indeed pass through the area where the original intersected. In other words, it's going to pass through the crash site where the original Titanic had sank at. We're still going to cruise from Dubai, says Clive Palmer. After a shakedown cruise from the shipyard to Singapore, we'll offer a 2-week maiden voyage to Dubai with another grand voyage from Dubai to Southampton. So they're still going to go ahead with the cruise from Dubai, but of course, after a shakedown cruise from the shipyard to Singapore, they're going to offer a 2-week maiden voyage to Dubai. And look how beautiful this is inside the Titanic. This is the ship's grand staircase, and look how beautiful it is. I can't even imagine of stepping foot on those grand staircases whatsoever. I really couldn't. Though the second coming of the vessel will be considerably larger, with 9 decks and 840 staterooms that can accommodate 2,400 passengers and 900 crew members. And so it is going to be larger this time, with 9 decks and 840 staterooms that can accommodate 2,400 passengers and 900 crew members. So that's going to be a pretty good amount of people. And of course, the famous grand staircase is going to be featured in the recreation. Of course, like I said, the grand staircase, look how beautiful it is. Oh my goodness. I mean, look how gorgeous this room is. How can you not love this room? Oh my gosh. Wow. Palmer has promised that guests will embark upon the most authentic experience. Blue Star Line will create an authentic Titanic experience, providing passengers with a ship that has the same interiors and cabin layout as the original vessel. And so he has pointed out that the guests will embark upon the most authentic experience. And of course, Blue Star Line will create the Titanic's experience and the cabin layout as the original vessel. But I cannot get over this beautiful room. Oh my goodness. And here's another room that is beautiful. Look at it, how beautiful it is. As we all know, the original Titanic was sectioned by class and social status, significantly affected passengers' accommodations on the ship. The Titanic too will also be split into first, second, and third class accommodations, and the berths are intended to be authentic. So with the original Titanic, it had the first, second, and third class. So that's what the replica of the Titanic is going to have: first, second, and third class. And of course, it's going to have social status significantly affected passengers, accommodations and that, and everything else. This means cramped quarters, but discounted prices for those in the third class and extreme elegance for those in first. So all the first class people, they get to live it up and everything else, while the third class people are going to have discounted prices, and of course they're going to be cramped into quarters, which I think it is ridiculous to be doing to people, but and of course here's the Titanic herself. Considering that the original Titanic was famously understocked with lifeboats, which ultimately resulted in the loss of 1,500 lives, it didn't take long for people to raise their concerns about this particular issue for the remake. Yeah, so there was, considering there was only lifeboats that were understocked, 1,500 lives were lost during that year of 1912. And it was really sad. Mothers holding their newborns froze to death in the Atlantic Ocean. It's just sad that people had passed away during that time. And of course, look how beautiful it is during the sunset. I do believe the Titanic is so beautiful during the sunset. He explains that the ship will integrate modern safety procedures, navigation methods, and 21st century technology to produce the highest level of a luxurious comfort. Yes, so he explains that the ship will integrate modern safety procedures. In other words, they want to make sure everything is safe, everything has a safety on it and everything. He has assured people that the ship will be decked out with an array of modern safety features, such as a welded rather than riveted hull, modern lifeboats, and digital navigation, satellite and radar systems. I'll believe it when I see it, of course. Of course, Palmer has assured people that the ship will be decked out, oh my gosh, of an array of modern safety features, such as a welded, rather than riveted hull, modern lifeboats, and digital navigation, satellite, and radar systems. Feel like hearing a little more about the original voyage? We've debunked 8 myths about the original ship and its journey. Just keep reading to find out what they are. Of course, there's 8 myths about the original ship that sank years ago. And of course, it's just so sad that it had sank to the lowest of the about the Titanic being at the bottom of the ocean, where Robert Ballard had found the Titanic. So it is really sad for what has happened to the Titanic, and it's not really that favorable at all. It's just too sad for what happened. Leave your comments below. I am out.